What you gonna do when you get what you need? What you gonna do when you arrive at the place called there? What you gonna do when they count on you? What you gonna do when they need you? What you gonna do when they depending on you? What you gonna do when they shout your name? What you gonna do, period? You all wanted the lights. You wanted the camera, and you wanted the action. And you got it. What you gonna do with it? What you gonna do with it? You wanted thousands to see you. Some of you didn't believe it could be done at HBCU, but we've done it. Now, what you gonna do with it? Because they didn't just come to see you show up. They came to see you show out. So my question is, what you gonna do with the moment? Let's maximize it. Let's dominate it. Let's take advantage of it. Let's make it subdue itself.
Yes, sir.
Fellas, but I want you to have fun. The 3 words, what are they?
Smart, disciplined, antagonist.
Let's do it all day long. I want to see that. Because we about to go out there and do what they want. Now give me my theme music.
What up, Internet? This is Scott with the Crescent Method. We took a couple weeks off to spend some time with some family. And, like I mentioned on the last episode, I went down to the old hometown, met with, my high school football coach, some coaches I used to work with back in the day, and a team from 2002 that my sister coached, which was a brand new high school. In their 3rd year as a school, they won the state title. And, after my sister passed away in 2003, I got to coach that high school team in 2003. And 4 of the girls from that team went on to set major NCAA Division I records. And, I was fortunate enough as a young man to be able to be surrounded by greatness, like winners, ass kickers, and greatness. And, I'm not saying by any means that my childhood was perfect, but one of the things I'm extremely grateful for from my family was they absolutely pounded into us that you will prepare yourself, you will put yourself in a position to capitalize on opportunity, and you will be the best that you can every day. And that's something that I wake up every morning, look myself in the mirror, and try to strive to be the best that I can be. And when I'm not my best, honor what that is and just try to make the most of it. And so I'm kind of coming off this really cool Hall of Fame event where I got to reconvene with some people from 20 years ago that had done some really amazing things. And, on the long drive home back to Utah, driving mostly in silence, got to sit with that. And, got to really reflect back on some of the things in my life that have gone extremely well. And, being grateful and fortunate for how my family raised us in the racing world and in the sports world, and ultimately how that translated into my professional life. And contrast to that, we've come back to our work, and to be completely honest, it's a pretty messed up time in regulated cannabis and non-regulated cannabis. And we've had some extremely, extremely heavy conversations in the past couple weeks since we've been back to work. And one of the things that Sarah and I do is we have those hard conversations with farms. And the point of tonight's YouTube call is to have that hard conversation with the YouTube world. And coming from a place of love and appreciation, and simply trying to impart in our consulting every day to those of you on the YouTube world that are not able to join us in our consulting. I'm just going to pause a second because YouTube is flashing all kinds of crazy lights it's never hit me with before, just making sure it's still working. Give me a shout out to the homies. So yeah, just like as Coach Prime, I'm all fired up on the sports shit right now. I'm not going to lie. I've been following Coach Dion in Jackson State. I'm like fired up, ready to go play some football at a college right now, 41 years old. But I think we need to, as a cannabis market in particular, and I know there's some food farmers and other agricultural friends and family out there that tune into the show. This is primarily focused at the cannabis market and the cannabis growers, of which I come from. And so when I speak tonight, I'm mostly speaking to the cannabis farmers it is, as we would define as a critical point of influence right now. It is never more critical in the history of cannabis cultivation to get your shit straight and get it together and put yourself in a position to be successful. And in the food side, in the planet side, the planet is in a critical point of influence. We had a phone call today from a client that is down in the tropics, and he mentioned today that there are 2 islands that got wiped out in a recent monsoon. I mean, we are smack dab in this thing that they've been trying to warn us about since the 70s of climate crisis. Like, that shit is here. It is here, it is now, and as farmers and as cultivators and as stewards of the planet, we need to FFIO, as they say it. We need to stop playing around. We need to stop just wearing regenerative hats, and we need to be about it. And today in particular, I'm going to talk mostly about the cannabis industry. I've had some extremely difficult conversations in the past 2 weeks with client gardens. We have a client garden that just suffered over $2 million in crop loss to soil issues from one of your most favorite online retailers of soil, which in my opinion in 2022 is completely unacceptable. And, you know, when you talk about maximizing the moment, if you are an online retailer of products to the cannabis market and you are in November of 2022 still causing heavy metal test damage that is putting farms on the verge of going out of business, you need to drop the legend status, and you need to FFIO, and you need to get your shit straight. And, you know, I'm in an extremely difficult position as somebody who is intimately and privately working inside of farms and also trying to communicate my message publicly. Probably completely inappropriate for me to name the retailer by person, but he knows who he is. He watches this show and he needs to get his shit together. We have 2 clients right now that have had catastrophic crop loss to cadmium and arsenic from a soil, and that's completely unacceptable in 2022. This is something that's easily measurable. And while we're talking about heavy metals, if you are a regulated cannabis farm in Oklahoma or California, or I believe New Jersey is going to be as strict, Michigan is proving to be fairly strict, you need to sample that soil before you start cultivating it. And the way that I manage it is I take a sample of that soil, I send it into the flower testing labs. It'll always say fail because they're on the parameters of flower, but it's not the fail in the sense what we're looking for is less than 10 micrograms per gram combined of any combination of the 4 heavy metals. For me, has been perfectly flawless since 2016. So that's kind of my personal target. Clearly, the other online retailers of soil are not interested in being accountable for the products that they're providing to the market. So it is your responsibility as a cultivator to sample the soil before you bet the house on it. And this is something that I do every batch. It's something I instruct every one of our clients. If you're a soil food web consultant, if you're an aspiring cannabis consultant, or you're a regulated market cannabis cultivator, without a doubt, the first thing that you should be doing is testing your soils for heavy metal before you even take it out of the totes. I test it before it even gets loaded on a truck and shipped to the farm. So that's first and foremost. So, you know, I guess I'll just kind of jump into some of the things that I've been thinking about the last couple days. And essentially what's on my mind is we have a group of cannabis cultivators from the legacy markets that have a desire to move into a commercial, regulated, legal job. We have cannabis cultivators that are not interested in that at all, and they're interested in continuing in the medical and legacy markets, which is perfectly fine. I think the same obstacles are presented to both cultivators on that path. And first and foremost, not everybody's going to make it. You just have to accept that. We are going through a major transition. I think someone said yesterday, there's like 27 new states coming online for recreational. That is going to have significant impacts to the legacy markets. And the only people that are going to thread it through the eye of the needle are the people that are approaching this as a professional. The days of being inefficient, the days of blowing a harvest in Costa Rica, those are gone. And we need to now approach this as a professional. We need to approach this as it's a job. And it doesn't mean we can't have fun, but there are new requirements that are undeniable. And I would profess that the only people that are going to make it are those farmers that are going to take a different approach from this point forward. And this is what I see every day in my consulting work. You know, we've had some very hard news to let some farms know in the last week that, you know, they because of certain parameters have a very low percentage of success. And it is fourth quarter, 2 minutes left, no fumbles, must execute type of moment. And so, you know, on the other side of that, I've got close personal friends that have stayed at my house. I've been to their house. They've helped me build grows. I've helped them with trim. And they get opportunities to move into a commercial facility and manage major facilities. And, you know, I hate to say it, close personal friends of mine that have access to my entire knowledge base aren't taking advantage of that. And, you know, when they get this big opportunity, most cannabis cultivators, to put it crassly, are shit in the bed. And, you know, it's okay to not know. I didn't know everything when I started this. And when we first got into these new areas of larger and larger facilities, it's not like I knew right off the bat how to make a 300 light grow room go well. But we had to start with a foundational basis of, you know, first and foremost, I guess, communication. So the thing that I see with my close personal friends that are given very legitimate, solid commercial opportunities that are likely to lose those opportunities is mostly based in not being able to clearly communicate what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are and where they need help. And I think this is a cannabis grower at large. You know, it takes a certain amount of, you know, belief in yourself to do this stuff. And I think that can sometimes spiral into really stubborn egos, you know, and I, you know, don't want to single out any personal friends, but I got a good buddy right now that's running a facility. I can't even get to do a fertilizer analysis. I can 100% guarantee you, if you are in a commercial cultivation situation and you are not analyzing very specifically the recipes that you are feeding to a plants, you will not be successful. And that's not an opinion. That's not me ranting. That is statistics from our commercial work, working with millions and millions of square feet of cannabis cultivation facilities. And those farms that analyze what they're feeding on a regular basis are successful. Those that are just winging it are going out of business like the dodo bird. And you know, you take somebody like, you know, you take like a Jungle Boys or you take like a Josh D. If you take famous dudes from the hydro world, they do a fertilizer analysis every single week of the year on every single crop. Do you understand that? Like, the people that are leading in the hydroponics world are doing a fertilizer analysis of what they send to their plants every 7 days. You know, in the regenerative world, it's hard to get people to do it one time, let alone every time they re-up fertilizers. And, you know, that's just crazy to me. And as a statistician, as a guy with a finance degree and a focus on the cannabis market of statistics, crop loss, profitability, finding pathways to profitability, I can tell you with certainty that if you are not analyzing your process, you will not be successful from this point forward. I'm just telling you, there's no more room for winging it. You know, we got $600 pounds coming out of the commercial markets. We got 2 ounces for $70 coming out of the recreational markets. Like, you can't wing it anymore. You know what I mean? Like, there's not that cushion of $2, $3, $4, $5, $6, $7,000 pounds that allows you to have catastrophic crop loss or some that miss the mark. Like, you know, it is absolutely essential, and that's non-negotiable. So if you're in the hydroponics world, you need to be analyzing your veg feed. You need to be analyzing your transitional feed. You need to be analyzing your flower feed through somebody like Wallace Labs. Logan is somewhat acceptable for the smaller scale. I think they leave a lot of trace minerals and other things out that we've seen screw plain and simple commercial farms because it doesn't provide enough information. So, you know, in the hydroponics world, you know, you need to, at minimum, every time you buy new fertilizers, mix up your recipe, send it in for analysis, and see where you're at. And one of the things that I really try to hammer home, especially into personal friends, like I got a good buddy right now who's running a salt farm and it's going well. And I said, please, for the love of God, send your recipe in right now so you can see what numerical targets and balance are providing good results. Because in that next harvest, if you get a bad batch of fertilizers or they're off a little bit and it starts going bad and then you do a test, you don't even know where the good is. So it's extremely important to define numerically what it looks like when things are going well. That is essential, non-negotiable in my opinion. Other things that are non-negotiable in my opinion are doing periodic water tests. We've got some masterclass students that are very small scale growers, but they're taking it very serious. A couple of them got 100, 200 parts per million of chloride. You could do all the magic wand waving you want. If you got 200 parts per million of chloride, that's going to cause a problem, and you need to address that, and you need to know that. Periodic water tests are non-negotiable in my opinion. So as a professional, whether you're running 4 lights or you're running 400 light rooms, I think that the only thing that is going to be successful is a professional approach to this process. And part of being a professional is communication, asking the right questions, looking for the right answers. And so I wasn't born with all these answers. I just was taught and stick to a principle of asking the right questions. And so part of asking the right questions is, what is my water chemistry? What is the condition of my water? What is the nutrient balance of my recipe when things are going well? What is the nutrient balance of my recipe when things are not going well? And just simply sitting down with those numbers, and you can kind of see when things are out of whack. So if you're in the living soil world, which I believe a predominant chunk of our listeners and clients are, is non-negotiable items is you need to be doing a soil chemistry test. I personally believe the Mehlich 3 is the most valuable. I personally believe that the current focus on the saturated paste test only is causing a lot of problems, so I don't agree with that at all. I believe that the Mehlich 3 test is currently providing the best, most actionable advice and numerical assessment of the soil chemistry. That's something that needs to be done once per harvest cycle, non-negotiable in my opinion. If you really want to enjoy this process and you really want to hit peak performance, then twice per harvest cycle is currently providing really good results in our work. Another thing that gets completely ignored in the living soil world is the microscope analysis. The reason that you know who I am and that you're here watching is because of the microscope assessment and what that led to our understanding of the cultivation process. I would put that as number one personally. When a farm sends us biological soil samples to analyze with the microscope, I can very clearly define your pathway through that cultivation space based on the distribution of the organisms in your soils. It is by far the most valuable tool for analyzing and assessing the agricultural process, in my personal opinion. If you're really looking to be as efficient as possible, that is the fastest way to it. So the way that we're able to run very low fertilizer strengths and very low quantities of nutrients is having very high biological activity. The way that we're able to produce literally the highest quality flour on planet Earth is by having extremely high biological activity, absolutely no powdery mildew pressure, and not having to spray for controlling for pests and bugs. So the only way you can get to that top 1% of flour quality on the planet is by not spraying IPM products at all. That's the last thing that leaves flavor and undesirable characteristics to the flour quality. So we need to ask the right questions about our process. We need to do simple things. If you're a 4-light grower or a single tank grower, at least put a paper calendar on the wall and write down when you feed, how much you gave, how much water did you give. Just simply log water quantities throughout the harvest cycle. That is bare minimum in my opinion. Obviously, as you get higher and higher in the commercial space, more and more is required of you. We have farms take track and trace data, and they'll translate that per plant yield into an overhead heat map, and you can see very clearly where the problems in your cultivation facility are. So if you're at the small scale, get yourself a bucket scale, and it's just like a little hanging scale, and when you harvest a single plant, weigh it and write it down and make a little map. I'm telling you, that'll be the most valuable information you ever gave to yourself, And when we started asking farms to do that in 2016, that's when the trajectory of our consulting went to the absolute top. And it's because we were teaching farms how to very specifically analyze and interpret their experience. So part of asking the right questions is testing, so non-negotiable in my opinion: water test, fertilizer analysis, and soil chemistry. Biological, if you're in a living soil, that's non-negotiable. Taking yields of your plant is the most valuable information you'll ever see. A lot of times when farmers hire us, they're looking for another 20, another 30, another 40% yield in order to get into that financially viable, really good time zones. And it's almost always easily found in the facility with variation. So there's a bed that's performing poorly, there's a corner that's performing poorly. When you start to really dice it down with varieties, some of the cannabis varieties dry down more than others. And most people aren't looking at their process this critically. And the farms that we've worked with that are the absolute top of the heap are able to determine the ratio of certain varieties in their entire room because of how they yield, how they dry down. And you start to find that financial viability is determined by the proportion of plants that sell well, plants that have a high value, and plants that hit the yield markers. So you need to start to dissect that and figure it out in some ways. Like I said early on in the beginning, one of the things I'm most thankful for from my family is, from grade school age, it was pounded into us that we need to prepare for the things that we want. There's a saying that says, in times of struggle, you don't rise to the occasion, you lower to your training. And so I think with cannabis growers in particular, they think just because they were the man on the streets, they're going to show up and run a 600 lighter like it's no big deal. And that very rarely happens. Usually you get your nuts kicked in. And so you're not going to just magically have the skills when the opportunity provides itself to you. You need to have been working on these skills and working on this education and working on these principles that will lead to success. So when that opportunity provides itself to you, you can at least execute at a level of satisfaction and, being able to complete that activity. And so, I'm not saying I've perfectly executed my entire life. And one of the things that I personally struggled with really bad in the beginning was those first farms that were regulated, and I handed my driver's license at the front door and I was on camera all day. I really struggled with that. I really, really struggled with that. And my mind was just running wild, convinced that I was going to get rounded up. Why did I give my name to the authorities that I grow cannabis? Turns out they've been tapping your phones for years. They already know. But because I had drilled down so much in my personal gardens, I was able to show up these major facilities, working under the lights, so to speak, on Monday Night Live, and my autopilot of these things that I drilled down in small personal gardens, I was able to autopilot my way through these projects, even though on the inside I was fucking screaming. I'm not gonna lie. Kind of the way I used to feel with this YouTube stuff doesn't trip me out anymore, but being on camera is generally not comfortable for me. It's not something I really wanted to do, but I've had to develop that skill to capitalize on this opportunity and to fulfill my role to provide quality information to a widespread audience that's not inside of our consulting. And so it's not something that's super comfortable for me, but I've put in the work to make it tolerable, and there's clearly a value coming from those of you on the other side of this video. And so this is what I must do, and I must rise to the occasion, or rather, reduce to my training essentially. And so I practice this shit. I've been working at this particular craft as hard as I have been working on nutrient balance, guiding farmers, and how to have success in the cultivation space. So you're not going to just, go from a 4-light grow, get thrown into a 1,000-light commercial facility that's tested, regulated, and monitored up the wazoo, and just magically execute. It's just not going to happen. We don't see it happen. And unfortunately, we see cannabis cultivators get shit canned on a regular basis because in the legacy markets, we're not given those opportunities. You know, I worked with some pretty big growers in the legacy markets back in my day. And, you know, even the biggest dudes might be running a 100 light warehouse. A couple dudes I knew were running a few hundred lights. Most guys were running a 30 light house, a couple 30 light houses, maybe 3 30 light houses. And I mean, just a few of those dudes I used to roll with were running hundreds of lights. And then those early consultants that I provided help to all of a sudden jumped into 300 light rooms. Like, cannabis is this brand new animal to where we've been at this very small, secretive scale, and now all of a sudden we can go as big as the money provides. And almost nobody has those skills to just jump in and magically execute. The way that you execute in those situations is by doing a water analysis, doing a soil chemistry analysis, analyzing your feeds, documenting your process so you can reflect back and look at what went right when it was going right. And when things are going wrong, you need to be able to look back and compare and go, well, you know what? We've increased our watering 20% this run. Maybe that's the problem. You know, a biological analysis would likely show that that's the case, you know. So, so I guess while I'm talking about that, I guess I'll complete a little bit of this rant, but now this is just personal advice, man. I sit in a lot of meetings, and because I can speak bro jive and because I have a degree in finance, I can sit down in between the investors and I can sit down with the grower and I can talk to the investor and I can talk to the grower. And a lot of times I'm like an arbitrator. I'm interpreting for the grower who might have a hard time communicating with the investment crew what's not going right for them or what they need for help. A lot of times I can interpret to the investor side what's currently wrong with their cultivation facility and why they're not having success. And if you are a legacy grower that gets an opportunity to run a commercial facility, there's a couple principles that you need to understand. You know, and I say this out of love, but market wide, pretty much everybody's tired of this ego and this, like, you know, this big kind of, I'm going to do the thing. And it's like, you know, we need to come into these situations with a little bit more humility. Nobody's run facilities this big. This is brand new for everybody. And you might have smashed the 4-light grow, but that doesn't mean you're going to smash the 100-light grow. And so coming a little bit softer, you know, coming a little bit more humble, be clear and communicate what your strengths are and be clear and communicate what your weaknesses are. This is the number one problem of cannabis growers. And like I said, I got a good buddy right now. That's his hardest part. And it's so difficult for him that I can't even help him right now. You know, I've told him exactly clearly what to do. But he's having a hard time communicating to his management, even to bring me on as an assistant. You know, I help him for free. But I can't even help him for free right now. And I really am concerned that one of my good friends is going to lose another commercial opportunity and, you know, be a shit out of luck. On the other side, you know, we've had some guys in the last week get released from farms because they weren't producing. And this is during a consulting relationship where I am here to guide you. And in both of these situations, these cultivators were let go because there was almost no communication. Like, I couldn't even help them as a professional advisor because, you know, we're not returning the data to me to help guide you. So we're not doing the foundational principles of soil chemistry. We weren't able to get the biological assessment done. And I think this is mostly because it's fairly overwhelming, right? And, you know, I'm really fortunate that as a kid, we were thrown into high-level athletics. So I guess I've got a little bit of practice, like not getting too razzle-dazzled in the brightness of the lights. And a lot of guys struggle with that. The way that you survive that process is with a little bit of humility and just clearly communicating what you don't know. And the thing that you need to admit first and foremost is in the legacy markets, it's by all means necessary. And most legacy growers are completely missing the fact of how often in a year they went for some Eagle 20 or they went for some Avid. And that shit doesn't fly in the commercial market. You have to be able to solve these problems without compounds that will cause a test fail and ultimately be a crop loss. You know, and in the legacy markets, if you want to keep rocking in that zone, that's fine. But what you have to understand is there is such a glut of product coming through commercial facilities that is not sprayed with Eagle 20, that is not sprayed with Avid, that is not sprayed with all these toxic chemicals that have been allowed, so to speak, in the legacy markets. And the consumer is preferring to buy those commercial pounds leaked from the regulated markets that are not covered with Eagle 20. And pretty much every legacy grower I've ever met gives it the Avid dip, gives it the Eagle 20 dip. Doesn't matter how organic they are, they still use that shit. And the consumer is telling you now they're no longer interested in that. And so if you're moving into the commercial market, it's just simply not allowed. So you need to figure a strategy to not do that. I can tell you it's mostly calcium based and too much nitrogen. So through testing your fertilizer recipe and through testing your soil chemistry, you can see that the pressure from powdery mildew and mites is coming from too much nitrogen and not enough calcium. So you got to change the way that you solve problems. And so even if you're going to maintain a legacy market cultivation experience, that's fine. But I can tell you the consumers are done smoking the burn your throat shit. They're done. They're done with it. And they're choosing to buy these leak pounds from Oklahoma. They're choosing to buy these leak pounds from the completely fucked California market. And I don't even know if the consumer knows why they're making that decision, but I can tell you they're completely done smoking Eagle 20. Nobody wants that anymore. And so even if you're not going into the regulated market, you need to do some analysis of your process to see where you're at numerically so that you can modify those numbers into a reasonable range and get into a position to where you're not required to spray systemic fungicides. And so previously we were only able to provide that advice in our one-on-one consulting. I now do a lot of mineral recommendations for small scale growers. We're starting to move into doing fertilizer blends with the OA products and the soil symbiotic stuff for small scale growers so that we can meet you there. And simple things like that will keep you from using systemic fungicides and systemic pesticides. So I think that is extremely important. At the small scale, it's extremely inefficient, like shockingly inefficient. A lot of 4-light grows run a window air conditioner. We've got dehumidifiers fighting air conditioners. We've got, $2,000 a month electric bills. And that's just not going to cut it. You have to figure out how to monitor your environment. I think on the small scale, first and foremost, if you got air exchange, you can stop the fighting of your dehumidifier with your air conditioner. Just doing that cuts your electric bill by 1/3. So if you're going to be a legacy market grower, the inefficient, sloppy build outs, with just like shit running all the time, like you're not gonna make it. Financially, you won't be able to make it. And you need to figure out how to control your environment in a way that uses significantly less electricity. That's just undeniable. So in the greenhouse space, any sort of sealed greenhouse with a bunch of big fans, it's going to be a hard time being financially viable into the future, regulated or non-regulated markets with that. You're going to need something with a ridge vent, something that you can passively cool. The days of just cranking the electricity and all kinds of crazy inefficient fans, like that shit's over. It's just not going to be financially viable into the future. And so the efficiency things go the same into the commercial markets. In the commercial markets, it's more of like employee waste. Like we got too many people sitting around doing nothing. We got a lot of throwing soil away because we're afraid of whatever, not understanding how to manage soil chemistry. So, there's a lot of waste from a standpoint of materials, inputs, and labor in the commercial market. That's not going to cut it. Like, I still stand by the stance that the only really financially viable commercial facilities into the future will be permanent soils and living soil grown. It's the only thing I've seen mathematically that can survive in a $600 pound market, plain and simple. So, at the small scale, stopping waste, at the large scale, stopping waste, the inefficiencies got to get tuned up. And that's a lot of what our consulting is. Ever since my first day getting into cannabis back in 2009, I was helping dudes calculate kilowatt hours. And I'm just like nerdy with electrical efficiency. It's just something that drives me nuts. I don't like paying major electric bills. So I was always tinkering, trying to figure out like where's the waste coming from and how do I drop this electric bill. So I think that's essential for sure. I think one of the other things that I see, and like this is mostly like a small scale grower thing, but you also see it in the commercial sense when guys get in over their head, is if you as a farmer believe that some new product is going to save the day, that's the complete wrong mindset. And below a certain scale, it seems like most of the home growers, they don't have enough exposure to fertilizer analysis, nutrient balance, and some of this higher level stuff that goes on in the commercial space. So most smaller growers are always looking for the new product. And right now, people are jumping all over this quesadilla extract, which is remarkably antimicrobial. It's crazy. I'd throw that shit in the trash. But we're always looking for like this new magical product that the legends are using. And it's like, the legends don't do that. Like real legends don't do that. Like the legendary shit is being done by Josh D, who analyzes his fertilizer once a week. I'm telling you, dude ain't looking for a magic product at all. You know what I mean? Jungle Boys ain't searching the internet for a magic product. They're doing a fertilizer analysis once a week. That's legendary shit. It's not in some new soap nut powder bullshit. I'm not saying that those things can't provide benefit, but you got to scrap, first and foremost, you got to scrap the idea that some new product is going to be what makes you profitable. What's going to make you profitable is analyzing, understanding, refining, and modifying your process. That's legendary, in my opinion. And so you've got to work with the basics. Like people are often extremely disappointed with how few products we use in our consulting work, but let it be known, we are producing some of the highest quality flower on the entire planet of Earth. And we're doing it with 6 products, and we just don't, we're not looking for new stuff. You need to hit calcium to magnesium ratios, you need to hit nitrogen to calcium ratios, and you need to hit calcium to potassium ratios. And you can do that with a lot of products. I prefer to use the Organics Alive powders and the Soil Symbiotic stuff that provides the cleanest smoking flower on the planet. And if you're looking for more, you need to analyze your process, and you need to consistently analyze your process so that you can refine it and keep it within the zone of success. And in the commercial space, we see that a lot. You get a guy that's runs really respectable, small scale legacy, even 100 lights or something, but they get into a regulated facility and it creates a panic of kind of being out in the deep water. And it's like, oh shit, let me get this new product to save the day. It's not that. It's water chemistry analysis, fertilizer analysis, soil chemistry analysis, and writing down your process. That's how you become a legend, in my opinion. I think that's about all I had on my notes for the rant. Hopefully I wasn't too offensive. I'm legitimately trying to provide value. I'm not trying to come down on nobody. But, when I first got into cannabis, I was never the big cultivator. I was never the big broker. I was never the big mover of product. I was the guy that sat down and said, where are the problems coming from? What does calcium do? How do you calculate kilowatt hours? And by around 2012, when it was starting to look the way of legalization, my personal goal was to keep as many legacy farms in business as possible. And man, it's been brutal this last year. It's getting very hard. And I hate to say it, but there's a changing of the guard happening. I'm not saying that if you were growing previously, you don't get to grow in the future. I'm saying that it is requiring something completely different from you. I started out as a weed grower. I now got to be some sort of TV producer. asking me to be something completely different than has ever been asked of me. And if I want to maintain my involvement in this industry, and if I want to provide value to those that are farming, this is what's currently asked of me. And so I'm having to figure out how to do online classes, which is fine. I love it. It's leading to great value, and I'm starting to see my students turn into legitimate consultants, and they will make waves in this industry. I promise you that. They will. There's going to be some radical changes, widespread, coming from this industry, from the people that are coming out of our classes. I'm being real. Some real shit's about to come down, and some really cool shit's about to happen. Because I am doing my best to properly equip people to guide other farms in the way that my wife and I guard farms. So if you're a legacy grower, not everybody's going to fit through the eye of the needle. And the only ones that are fitting through the eye of the needle in living soil are doing regular chemistry analysis, regular water chemistry analysis, documenting their process, and analyzing what the hell they're feeding their plants. You would be mind blown at the variation in the nutrients you use. You would be mind blown. And you don't know that unless you're quantifying it. And so the only way, I'm saying this with fact as somebody that analyzes the industry to the penny and does cost predictions and like I do all kinds of spreadsheet shit. The only farms that will be financially viable into the future are those that are monitoring their process. And if you're not at least doing those minimum documentations of water usage, when you're feeding, keeping an eye on your water, you're just not going to be able to sustain the ebb and flows. And first and foremost, I think what's going to be required from the legacy market, because so many mids are coming through the struggling commercial facilities that are leaking them into the legacy markets, it's my belief the only legacy growers that are going to be successful are those that are actually producing that highest quality. Nobody wants to smoke Eagle 20 anymore, and it's going to be really hard to push mids onto the black markets. Just going to throw that out there. And so in order to produce the highest quality, you need to approach this as a professional. I don't care if you're running a tent. I don't care if you're running 5,000 lights. You have to approach it in a different way. And, same for the commercial facilities. You just, there's no, winging it's done, man. This whole thing in the regenerative community about how it's become like a badge of honor to wing it, that's a fool's strategy for the dinosaurs. I've done so much analysis of farms. Sarah's, my wife's sister, her soil was the second closest to ideal of any soil I've seen of somebody that wasn't testing. There was one other guy from Humboldt that got really close without testing. Nobody else is anywhere near close. I'm just going to throw that out there. If you're following the current popular trends, that shit's nowhere near ideal soil chemistry. Winging it ain't going to cut it. Like you need to start with some data. I'm not saying humans don't possess the intuition to do that. I'm just saying most humans, statistically, mathematically, as someone who's analyzed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of soil samples from hundreds and hundreds of farms, statistically, I've seen like 3 farms that got close by just winging it. And one of them was Sarah's sister, not even a weed grower. So yeah, I guess I'll jump into some of the questions. Yeah, the quesadilla extract, that shit's junk. It's not legend status. It destroys soil. One of the Soil Food Web advisors in the UK, his name's Adam. He's a lot like I am, where he just puts this stuff to the test. So many of you out there, and I'm not trying to be a dick, you just don't put any testing or require any accountability of the authorities in the industry. And nobody puts anything to the test. They just go, oh, they're doing it, must be good, And this one guy, Adam, he's a Soil Food Web grad, he tested it out and we were talking about it, and he said, generally speaking, the current application rates of the quesadilla extract are 10 times that which is not remarkably antimicrobial. So at minimum, you need to reduce those application rates by at least 10. And in Adam's study, he found that it actually destroyed soil structure, made it more hydrophobic, and did the opposite of what we're after. And so I'm just asking for a blanket, fucking like as a regenerative community, can we ask basic accountability of those that feed us shit? That's my one request. Like, so that's the point of these classes. I'm trying to educate a larger mass of people that ask the right questions, that require and demand accountability of those that are making millions of dollars off of our crop loss. And that should be standard minimum, non-negotiable. So no. Quesadilla's out. Doing the current Soil Food Web consultant training. That is amazing. When you get rid of that class, or when you get through that class rather, you're going to want to take the soil balancing class. So that's, the Soil Food Web, the techniques from Dr. Elaine was the tool, and it was the what opened the door for me. It was what allowed me to provide a unique analytical process of the cultivation experience that was essential and invaluable in the early stages of regulated cannabis for organic cultivators. It was the one-on-one Q&A sessions where I could sit at the dinner table with Dr. Elaine that provided me the support and the mentorship guidance to be a professional consultant that contributed to all my other experiences to get me to where I am now. But we wouldn't get the results we get now without fertilizer analysis, without soil chemistry. You can't do it just on biology. So yeah, we got another Soil Food Web grad. You're going to want to learn soil chemistry. I think that's dope. You're going through these classes. So I'm going to give it a little bit to allow some questions to come through. I don't know if anybody has any questions after my ranting. Hopefully I wasn't too offensive, and hopefully I provided value. But like, this is a no fumble situation, y'all. Like we are heading into a critical point of influence of all cannabis everywhere. We are heading into climate crisis. We are heading into very serious times. We got World War III on the goddamn fringe. We got 10% interest rates on homes. Like, this is not a time to be casual and sit back and see what happens. Like, this is a time to put very serious effort into very legitimately understanding the agricultural process, to very clearly understand how to maintain a soil in a healthy fashion. This is an extremely critical time to know how to make biologically complete compost. This is an extremely critical time to know how to manage biological communities in the soil, because all of those things lead to low cost, high efficiency, high output, high quality, and actual sustainability. And in my opinion, nothing else is going to make it in the short term through the eye of this needle. And I'm not trying to be a fearmonger. I'm trying to tell you, as someone that has analyzed soils around the entire planet and worked with hundreds of farms, I've worked with the National Resource Conservation Service, I've worked with city parks, I've worked with foreign governments. Like, I'm telling you, as somebody that's very tapped in and tuned in to the environment and the farming practice at why this is not a time to be casual. So, and thank you for the compliments. I do appreciate it. I think this came when I was talking about the videos. I put a lot of time and effort to figure out how to make these comments pop up. And I do appreciate those of you that appreciate that I'm speaking direct. I'm not the one here to fluff it. I'm not the one here to try and meet everybody's needs. I'm here to be authentic, and I'm here to be honest. That's it. I don't think we have a date for the next basic training. The next soil balancing class starts tomorrow. I would assume maybe after the holidays, after Thanksgiving. It's kind of hard to do the master classes intermingled within the holidays. So it might be January by the time we do Crescent Method basic training. And I leave that stuff up to Sarah, to be quite honest. So when she's on next week, we'll come up with an answer for that. She's the calendar lady. So yeah, man, shots fired. Shots are fired. I have 2 farms that were almost put out of business by people that call themselves a legend and just put people out of business. Shots are fired. shots are fucking fired. I'm here to protect farmers. I'm here to protect integrity, and I'm here to protect accountability. So, so here's a question about soil mineral balance. So, what the real value? The real value of the microscope analysis is keeping everything in line. So the microscope analysis can tell you if you're overwatering. It can tell you if you're underwatering. It can tell you if you're overfeeding. It can tell you if your environment is too humid. And so the way that Sarah and I use that microscope assessment is fine-tuning all of the components of the cultivation space to put you into peak efficiency and peak performance. So what's interesting is most farmers are overfeeding, most farmers are overwatering, and when you come in with the microscope assessment and you reduce fertilizer quantities and you reduce water quantities, biological activity goes up, and you can usually cut fertilizer applications in half. So generally speaking, what we do is back off watering 10 to 20%, back off feeding 10 to 50%, increase biology, and then all that reduction leads to higher output, which leads to usually 30 to 40% increase in all categories. I say yield most often, but it's potency, it's 30 to 40% reduction in costs. Once you really get good at the microscope analysis, and Dr. Lane has told us not to say this, but I'll say it, like I can forecast powdery mildew pressure. I can forecast certain pest pressures. You're not supposed to say that, but I'm telling you we can. Like I said, we just went over some microscope assessment of a farm yesterday, and I was able to say, you start here, and then you move to this group, and then you end with that group. And they're like, yep. And it's just the way that the organisms are distributed across the space. So in other older talks, I've talked about a farm that had 5 beds, and they stretch out the hose, and they come all the way to here, and they water bed 1. Because the hose is stretched out, they go all the way to bed 5, and they water bed 5, and then they reel in the hose a little bit, and they go to bed 2, bed 4, and then bed 3. And the nematode distribution perfectly mirrors that pattern. And so the nematodes are the heaviest, so they sink to the bottom. So they usually end up, depending on your distribution system, they either end up at the first spot or they end up at the last spot. Using the microscope to track nematode populations can tell you like how you move through your building. And then as you reduce that variation and get things consistent, 20, 30, 40% yield pops up out of nowhere. The real strength of the microscope is it can guide you to the most cost-effective approach, the most efficient approach, completely eliminate powdery mildew, and radically minimize any sort of pest pressure. And then the consequence of that is 30 to 40% more yield, 30 to 40% less costs, 30 to 40% more potency, terpenes, all that shit. So that's what we do. The bioreactor has been a good steady flow. We do have a module on our website where it's just a video you can buy, and it teaches you how to do the bioreactor that Sarah made. You can do it yourself. We started ordering all the parts to give you a kit, so hopefully really soon in our store we'll have the kit to make a bioreactor. I think the bioreactor is a great strategy. I think what Dr. Johnson came up with as a method is solid. I have significant reservations about his ability to operate a microscope. He shows videos of nothing all the time, which is really baffling. He came up with a really good strategy for making compost, but I have not been impressed by any images he shared of his compost, which I'm sure is a letdown to any sort of qualified soil food web microscope people that know what they're looking at. So I think that kind of slows down the momentum on the bioreactor, but we use it everywhere. Sarah has been kicking ass with several composting facilities using the bioreactor method, producing remarkable numbers. So bioreactor, I love the bioreactor. We don't make it like Dr. Johnson does, and we certainly don't do half manure, half wood chips. So in the module class, Sarah breaks it down exactly how to do it and our changes for it. So the scope class, same thing. It'll probably start back after the holidays. It's a little bit hard to do that stuff through Christmas and stuff. And most people got to save that money for dealing with family matters and traveling and stuff. So we're just being honest that it's just a hard time to fill up a class through the holidays. So probably January, February, something like that. And yeah, some of the items are difficult to find for the bioreactor, which there are some modifications to it. I don't like cutting holes in the pallet. I think that's a bad idea. So we make a bracket that holds the tubes. So we're looking for a manufacturer of those, and we'll be selling those pretty soon here. And the landscape fabric's a little hard to find. You got to buy 250 feet of it. So that's something we just ordered this week, and we'll start selling little pieces of it if you want a piece for one bioreactor. Because it sucks to buy $250 worth of landscape fabric to cut off a 12-foot piece to make one bioreactor. So we'll be selling that here next week or two. So yeah. So right on. So I think I've hopefully not broken the internet too bad. Hopefully I didn't offend anybody. Hopefully I inspired. And you got to ask yourself, when you get the moment, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with that moment? Are you going to pee down your leg? Are you going to meme your boss like one of my good buddies and get fired? I got a buddy that just been in charge of running a big ass facility, memed his boss, and got fired. Like, god damn, you know what I mean? Like, what are we doing, guys? Like, this shit's embarrassing. So I don't know. Liquid feed class is coming. It's just very complicated. That's something that's going to come in the beginning of the year. It will be a mandatory part of our consultant training program. So Sarah and I are working on it. We will be releasing that in the next year, first of next year. So, but for now, we do the fertilizer blends, custom to your water test, and then the next thing will be the liquid feed class. So, right on. So on that, we're going to bounce out, and I'll leave with the homie Prime Time to remind you what we're going to do.
What you gonna do when you get what you need? What you gonna do when you arrive at the place called there? What you gonna do when they count on you? What you gonna do when they need you? What you gonna do when they depending on you? What you gonna do when they shout your name? What you gonna do, period? You all wanted the lights. You wanted the camera, and you wanted the action. And you got it. What you gonna do with it? What you gonna do with it? You wanted thousands to see you. Some of you didn't believe it could be done at the HBCU, but we've done it. Now, what you gonna do with it? Because they didn't just come to see you show up. They came to see you show out. So my question is, what you gonna do with the moment? Let's maximize it. Let's dominate it. Let's take advantage of it. Let's make it subdue itself.
Yes, sir.
Fellas, but I want you to have fun. The 3 words, what are they?
Smart, disciplined, antagonist.
Let's do it all day long. I want to see that. Because we about to go out there and do what they want. Now give me my theme music.